Hey, I'm Ange.
And I'm Beck.
And we are the Gold Diggers, because we believe there's gold found in everyone.
Everyone is unique, interesting and exciting with a great story to share.
And we aim to find it.
The question is, can we rise to the challenge and strike gold? Stay tuned to find out as we chat to today's mystery guest.
Honey, you're my sugar.
So this is how it works. One of us usually doesn't know the mystery guest, and the other one does. But today we actually have two mystery guests, which are Nicola de Wever and Kerryn Waters. Welcome.
Hello, thank you.
Thanks for joining the show today. And so that means, Ange, that neither of us are leaving the room today.
That is because we are.
We don't know who they are.
This is actually the first time that we've met. And so this is going to be a case of both Beck and I are going to dig for the gold
These
together.
are the kind of moments you are allowed to talk to strangers. But by the end of this, you won't be a stranger to us.
No, that's right. But I do have a little intro just so you listeners can follow along. We have Nicola, who is 37. You are solo parenting two gorgeous kids, aged 10 and 7.
Correct.
But you're also a police officer.
I am. Yeah, I have been for 15 years now, so a long time.
Wow.
Wow.
I'm sure you've got plenty of amazing stories in your file of facts.
Yes, very amazing. Yeah, very much so. Yeah, very different.
Awesome.
And we also have Kerryn here, who's 46, married, and you've got 4 adult children.
Yes,
And you are a fitness and nutrition coach.
I am. Yeah.
Yes. So we'll get into that. Now, the reason that we've brought you together, because this is an interesting one, is actually from one of our previous podcast guests, who is Christy Irish, and she was in episode 18 called Going for Gold. And for those of you that have been following along in our podcasts, if you listen to Christy, she was the one that was a figure skater. And unfortunately, there was an injury that meant that she couldn't actually go for the Olympics. And I remember her saying how disappointing that was and how she had to process through that. But actually now, knowing Christy, she's always going for gold in some way. And since she's last been on the podcast, and I'm saying this as if Christy's not in the room, but she is actually here off camera.
She's trying very hard not to talk. It's very difficult, isn't it, Christy?
We've set her the challenge not to talk.
She's
So
doing sign
Christy has lost how many kilos?
Sign language says
30. She's lost 30. See, look, she's not even talking. She's not even saying.
She's being so good.
So since she was last on the podcast, has lost 30 kilos and is on a bodybuilding challenge and intends to compete next year. And so Kerryn and Nicola or Nick are her trainers. Is that correct?
Kerryn is. Yep. I'm a friend and motivator as well, so provide some motivational sort of things for Christy to sort of work on, I guess.
Wow. Well, it looks like she's got a good team around her.
Because you are both professional bodybuilders, is that correct?
No, I'm not pro, but Nicola is. Yeah, I won my pro card in September last year. So, yeah, very proud of that moment. But, so something I've always wanted to do, and I will continue on that journey somewhat. But, very exciting.
So this is going to be an interesting podcast because clearly Beck and I know nothing about bodybuilding.
I do not.
But we did have someone else on our podcast a few weeks ago who's actually my sports nutritionist, and she talked about being a professional bodybuilder in her previous life. And just what a challenge that was, how time consuming it is, how challenging it was and family and that sort of thing. So I'd really love to get into what life looks like for you on a day-to-day basis, because I'm so fascinated by the absolute discipline you need to be able to be professional in bodybuilding, but really take care of your health, your nutrition. So when we did our mic test just a moment ago, we always ask what's for breakfast. And Kerryn, what was it? 30 grams of oats, oats, 30 grams of. So everything is measured, everything's calculated, and how do you fit that into normal life?
All right, can I caveat that? I don't normally, not to that nth degree, am I measuring everything. It's only when I'm in either a competition or a cut. So I started a cut about 2 weeks ago. And what I mean by a cut is when you kind of you've built up during the off season, you've been trying to improve and build muscle, and if you want to put muscle on, you have to kind of accept a little bit of fat. And I'm quite free and a normal human during that period. But when it comes to time to get some of that body fat on and hold on to that muscle, it's a little bit more regimented. And as difficult as that sounds, like once you've been doing it long enough, like I know a scoop, I know what 30 grams looks like. So you can kind of put things together, prep it all, and it's easy and it tastes delicious. Like what I described to you that I had for breakfast is literally better than dessert. So it's very easy to stick to when you love what you're doing, I think.
So when you say that you are a normal human being during that other time where you're allowed to eat a bit more, what happens to you when you go through the regimen?
Nothing. I just you just switch on. I think. I think having that goal of hopping on a stage at some point is enough to keep you on track to do whatever you need to, right? Because you're hopping up on a stage in a G-string and a bad tan and a pair of high heels in front of an audience. And if you're really crazy, you invite your father along to watch. Oh, dear. That's enough to make you stick to a plan, I think. And it's not the goal. Like for me, that's not where I get the enjoyment. I love hopping on stage, but that's not where I get the enjoyment from. I actually get enjoyment from the day-to-day process of being in the gym and lifting one more rep, or, you know what I mean? Or knowing that everything I eat is so good for my health, and that I'm doing a really good job for looking after myself, because if I do that, I can look after the people I love.
Yeah. So is your aim to be a professional bodybuilder?
I'm not. We were just chatting about that on the drive here. I'm not sure a pro card is what I'm after. And I say that simply once you do win your pro card, we were chatting about the number of shows that you can do. It becomes quite limited and you're quite tied to whatever the agreements are under professional arrangements, contracts. It'd be nice to win a pro card and then I'd decide whether I'd accept it. That'd be okay. But I would just love to compete internationally. I'd love to be world champion at an amateur level at some stage.
So I don't know anything about pro cards or anything. So can you explain to me what's involved with that?
Yeah. We should get Nick saying.
Nicola, can you?
Yeah. So once you obviously Kerryn's saying that you can choose whether you accept the pro card or not. That's when you sort of take on the role of professional athlete within your chosen federation. So my federation, Miss Fitness, obviously I've got my pro card with them, so it limits you to what other federations you can compete with and retain your pro card. So if you decide to compete in a different federation per se, say there's lots of different federations, so WBFF, IFBB, ICN, INBA, NBA, A&B, different federations, and if you choose to then compete at a professional level within a different federation, you can then forfeit your pro card. So
is it like a sponsorship and you're connected to that group who've kind of taken you on?
Yeah, you can be sponsored in that regard. Yeah, not necessarily sponsored, but you can be sponsored. And then obviously once you choose to venture into a different federation, you then forego those benefits of being with that particular federation. But I think...
And what would be the criteria then? Like what do you have to achieve to get a pro card?
Yeah, like do they choose you? Do they point you out and go, oh, that person, let's support that person? Is that how they do it?
Yeah, so once you've obviously got to show your tenacity and within that federation they've got to see that you're the sort of athlete that they would want to have as a professional under their banner, under their federation. So you obviously have to have a certain standard of your lifestyle and things like that. They want to be able to be spruiking someone who's very positive for their brand. So you will compete on stage, you'll compete against various other people, various other walks of life. They will select you. Obviously, there's a panel of judges and you need to meet the criteria for your discipline, for your division to then become a professional in that aspect. So they will choose the best person in that regard and then say, you know, this is the one that we've chosen to give the pro card to. You win first place in your division, you've won first place in your opens or your overalls, and then you get your pro card from that point on.
So have you won any competitions?
Yeah, so my first competition was back when my daughter was 2, so 6 years ago, and I competed within a different federation, and I competed in the bikini division. So it's quite different, the different levels you can compete in. So my first competition was bikini. I was in the under 35s and I won first place in the amateur for that particular division. So I came first in my bikini. My prep for that comp was 8 weeks. And then my next competition was a couple of years later, and I moved up to fitness and sport, which is a different division. So you're then more muscular, quite a bit leaner as well. In the bikini division, you don't have to be as sharp. They call it sharp. So your muscles are less sort of visible in the abdominal area. You're not bulky. In a bikini division, you're just sort of more toned and athletic looking, but not muscular.
Yeah. The idea is that you've kind of just walked off the beach.
Yes.
And it's quite an attainable normal look.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So slim as opposed to muscular.
Yeah,
so
got it.
By the time I'd trained then for another couple of years from my first competition, I'm quite, my body type does grow muscle quite easily. So because potentially my lifestyle, I don't drink alcohol, I look after myself in that regard, my muscle does grow quite quickly, and I'm still a natural competitor. But it just seems that biologically in DNA, my body type is just that I progress quite quickly. So I'm now a fitness and sports model as opposed to bikini. So my abdominal muscles are quite visible. I've got large, broad shoulders, and I'm rather lean. So if I was to compete then in a bikini division, I would lose because I'm too built.
It's all right. So would I. I'm going for the full piece position with a covering from maybe mid-length knee.
You're going for the burkini.
I saw a lovely beach covering the other day. Anyway, enough about me. Sorry.
I was going to say, I'm interested. You won that competition when your daughter was 2?
2, yeah.
Was 2 years old. I imagine that is a busy mom life, and perhaps you can both chip in here. To get to that level in fitness would require hours in the gym. Is that right? So how did you manage that?
Yeah, so I'm always quite lean, generally speaking. Like I said, I don't drink alcohol. I've always eaten in moderation. I don't eat to excess. I was a dancer in a past life, so I've done a lot of movement and dancing and kept myself relatively fit. So losing that sort of little bit of weight that I had to shove was not really a difficult sort of thing to do. It was more so the next competition where I had a 12-week prep where I was leaning out a little bit more, and then obviously won my sports and fitness division in the next competition. So that was a bit more testing for me because I'd been through my separation. I spend 2 hours in the gym each day. I don't like a rest day. I'm the sort of person that has to keep moving. Otherwise, I feel like I've failed myself and my children and my family. So I'm training constantly. So there's that guilt associated with it as well, sort of in the background. So I just persevere and push. So it's a lot of training, but I just love it. It's something that I do so that my children can say, my mum did that and she got up on stage and she did it with everything else that was going on in her life. She still managed to try and make us proud, because that's what I'd like, is to have my kids look at me and go, that's my mum, I'm proud of her. So,
So, and for you,
so I didn't discover bodybuilding until 45.
Wow.
45. And
so that's quite recent.
Yeah. So I turned 47 next month. So
same age.
Yeah, 44 is probably the right, and competed just when I turned 45.
Yeah.
I mean, I was a swimmer when I was a kid, and I was interested in sport and fitness, but very much in the corporate world, and a busy mum with growing boys. I think, my kids are now like adults. So it had gotten to the point where I grew up. We used to have Dolly magazine. Remember Dolly magazine? And if you wanted to lose weight,
it was maybe an Aussie thing.
It's appalling. There was no social media, which is probably just as bad. But we'd read Dolly magazine, and you probably didn't think you didn't know you had a problem with like belly fat until you read a Dolly magazine, and then you went, oh, I don't look like those people. And the way we were told to, or taught to kind of fix that is do lots and lots of cardio and eat lettuce, right?
Yeah.
So I was one of those people who was forever, I wasn't up and down in weight, but certainly wasn't educated on what I wanted to look like, but I absolutely wanted to look fit, right? Most of us did. So, I've done every detox diet. I've done, if you've got it, if you can think of it, I've probably done it.
Yeah.
And so it was interesting. I was doing really, really well in my corporate life. My entire world was about the work that I did. But what people didn't know is that, at night, I'd be sitting there Googling, how can I lose weight fast? Or I'd walk past the wardrobe mirror and grab the fat roll, and I was forever obsessed with and ashamed at the same time that I cared so much, because I was killing it in the rest of my life. So anyway, I was at that point, I was in the gym doing cardio bikes for like an hour and a half a day. I think Pilates was pretty cool at the time, so I do Pilates 5 days a week. I love Pilates, by the way. I
Me
won't
too.
knock that.
I'm a fan of Pilates.
Yeah. It's good. It's good. But I still didn't look how I thought I should look. And the only thing I hadn't even crossed my mind was my diet. So I started looking into it and started, teaching myself what I needed to know. And all of a sudden things started to happen, and I started following people on YouTube who were, scientists, and kind of really learning the science behind it all, and then kind of led down a path of, well, perhaps cardio and Pilates isn't going to get me to where I want to be. So maybe I need to lift something heavy. So I started, I'd done this amazing thing and tweaked how I looked just purely from what I'd done in my diet. And I remember scrolling and seeing one of the Miss Olympias kind of come up on my screen, and went, oh, wow, she looks amazing. I want to look like that. And it took me about a year's courage built up before I approached a bodybuilding coach who we both had. I'm coaching myself now, but we both share Joey. And started working with him, and really started to understand that if I'm going to the gym for an hour every day, so I know you do 2 hours, I'm about an hour 5 days a week. If I'm going to go, which most people kind of do, an hour 5 days a week, I want to do it in the best way possible to get the best result. And if I'm going to eat, and everybody has to eat, I may as well eat the best way that I possibly can. And sure enough, when you put the two together, there's not a lot extra time being invested in what I do than what I was previously. But treating my body like a science experiment and going, oh, when I eat more protein, this happens. I can lift heavier. I feel better. And if I drink more water, I behave better with other people. So all of those sorts of things started to come together in a way that enhanced how I was feeling. And sorry, I'm on a long monologue.
Go for it. You go.
And the really interesting, the thing that I'm fascinated by is what started off as a purely vanity thing, like I wanted to look better, became what can I do? Like, can I lift heavier? Look at me, I just climbed up on that stage in a bikini in front of my father. What else can I do? And that, I don't know, that self-awareness and self-confidence you can pick up and apply to anything in your life.
Empowering.
It's probably why I ended up like walking away from my corporate job and having the balls to kind of start my own business and help other people, not necessarily with bodybuilding, but kind of follow that same journey in whatever endeavour.
So what corporate job were you working in?
Lots. So I started way back when I finished high school. I went to uni, but we weren't a rich family. So mum and dad were in North Queensland, and Austudy was kind of getting me through to pay my rent. And I started working for Woolies part time, and I did 3.5 years of that. 3.5 years of an applied science degree. I was just slogging it financially, and Woolies said, "We love you, come and work for us." Fast forward 19 years later, and I was running BWS for Queensland, and left there, and I've worked running 4 businesses for Rent a Kill Initial. It's a UK-based firm. Yeah. And then I ran the global operations for a medical innovation company.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's
great.
lots of corporate stuff.
Yeah,
super high stress. But the only way I've defined success in my life up until about 3 years ago was, how am I going work-wise?
You're right.
Yeah.
And then you've got a business now, your own business. What's that?
So nutrition, it's health coaching.
Yeah.
I think I put it in my bio. People don't get that. Like, I'm a health coach. What do you do Reiki, or what do you do? So what I do is I help people who are in similar situations to me, particularly. So corporate women are killing it in their workplace usually, but want to get their health together and get a handle of that, because they can conquer things. They know they can. They're just not quite sure what to do or how to make it work in their lifestyle. So I lead with nutrition. I love nutrition, and I'll talk about it all day, every day to anyone who wants to listen. And I back it up with a physical activity as well. So I'm a qualified PT as well. So I kind of bring it all together.
Yeah.
But the one missing piece, I think, when people think of PTs and they think of nutritionists is give me a meal plan or an exercise plan, and that's what I follow.
Yeah.
The way I see it, if that's all it was, 67% of Australians wouldn't be overweight and obese, and they are.
Yeah.
Right. And back in 1980, it was only 40%, just still a high number. So there's obviously something we're not getting right if that many people are struggling with their weight and their health. So what I try to do or take from my corporate success is in the way in which I've led people in the past was from developing the people who worked for me. That's how I was successful. It was never about stuff I can do. It's about, hey, if all these people below me are feeling really great about their jobs and working and being the best that they can be, and I'm helping them kind of achieve their goals, they're going to, give me a huge amount of discretionary effort, and we're going to, really kick some goals. So I think the skills that I brought or took from that experience about coaching other people, being very involved in helping them be the best that they can be.
Yeah.
And the coaching angle of that is, I think, the missing piece to a lot of, meal plans and exercise plans. So I kind of bring the three together and work with people individually over a period of time. We set a goal, and then we go, what do we, this is the gaps. If you want that goal, these are the gaps, and what are you willing to do off this list? And let me help you get there.
Well, it's obviously working very well, because Christy's lost 30 kilos and looks absolutely fabulous. Not that you didn't anyway, but and is obviously well on her way to reaching her goals.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm interested, Nick, because obviously you're a police officer.
Yeah.
Does this help you in your job? Is that like a really stressful job when you find that your outlet is in the gym? Or
I think a lot of it could be that, yeah. I do thrive on structure and routine in my life. So I've always had challenges, as everyone's got challenges to overcome, and I work through my challenges with structure, routine, thinking logically, how am I going to move from one place to the next, that sort of thing. So I sort of involve all of those aspects in my life, where work, obviously, that's very structural. We have uniform that needs to be a certain standard. We work at certain hours. We do certain things. We have to follow certain protocols, and professionalism, integrity, that sort of stuff. That's really important to me. So that sort of just comes through into my personal life anyway. So I obviously have to practice what I preach. So especially as far as my children are concerned, I want them to see me living a certain way all the time, not just, I'm a police officer, my lifestyle, and allowing those donuts and alcoholic beverages and things like that to take over when I get home from work, because the stresses of work can often lead to binge eating, alcoholism, stress, depression.
Is that why we always see in the movies that police officers are eating donuts?
We like
what is it?
We like a donut.
So it is a thing.
I won't even deny that myself. I love a donut. So I don't know whether that's just bred into us as police officers, or if it's just something that happens and it's just that stereotype.
It's kind of more of an American thing, I think, isn't it? They really stereotype.
I'm happy to play with that one. I do love a donut. But I eat in moderation, so I do enjoy, living my life in certain regards. I in my previous years, I often restricted myself in a lot of ways because I had certain goals I wanted to achieve. And now, since I've turned 30 and started my life by myself, I've now decided that I'm going to live a little bit more. So I'm a little bit more relaxed in certain areas, but I also still have that structure and that routine. So where my health is concerned, I won't budge. I go for my daily walks. I go to the gym every day. I don't let myself fall off that. But I do enjoy dark chocolate, and I do enjoy donuts and cakes and baked goods, but I have everything sort of in moderation. So I won't have the whole cake. I'll just have a slice of cake.
Yeah. That's the problem, though, isn't it? Once you start, you can't stop.
That's it, exactly.
So tell me about your work in the police. You were saying before, you hinted at that there's some scary moments. There's some...
Absolutely, yeah.
What's one of the scary moments you can tell us about?
There's lots of scary moments, as you say, that I can tell you about. There's some things I obviously can't divulge. I've had I've lived a very experienced life as far as policing is concerned, where I wasn't just stationed in a Brisbane City metro sort of station. I worked in Indooroopilly for 6 months, which is a little suburb in Brisbane. I've worked in Brisbane City, which is rather busy. I worked there for 12 months. I worked in central Queensland for 6.5 years. So that's the sort of place where you'll experience a lot more, a very broad range of jobs and experiences come from those sorts of smaller towns. Yeah. More often than not, you've got a station where you've got 20 police officers covering a larger area, and if you need backup, they're asleep. You need to call them, wake them up, get them dressed, get them to the station, get kitted up with their gear. So it's often just yourself and your partner in the car that becomes the scary scenario, where you look at jobs and you look back and go, that could have gone in so many different ways, and I'm glad it didn't. But you think back and go, all the what ifs sort of creep back and things like that. So
I remember my uncle used to be a police officer at the one-man police station in Kew in New South Wales.
Yeah,
and similar thing, there's a big distance between you and the next call for help.
Exactly, that's right. So where you're working in Brisbane City Station or somewhere that's quite busy, you'll have a lot of officers all around you all the time. So if you need backup, you get on the radio, and within maybe 1 to 2 minutes, you've got at least another crew coming to back you up. But in a station where I was, central Queensland, in a little town called Emerald, you're often waiting 45 minutes to an hour to have that backup. So you've got to be able to really handle yourself in a situation to the point where you don't have to retreat, or if you do, you can for a certain time until you do get backup. So you have situations where you've got farming communities where people have access to lots of different firearms and things like that, and sometimes they'll get into the hands of the wrong people, or, you know, certain stresses and pressures in life with we saw within the farming industry, and, you know, the drought really pushed people to certain lengths that they wouldn't normally have gone to, and things like that. So lots of people under a lot of pressure, and it affects people very differently. So we have to obviously be aware of that. We rely on our communications a lot as far as the radio is concerned to inform us of what's going on, what weapons are registered at the address, who lives at the address, who commonly goes to the address, what we should be looking out for, what the history is like. So we get a lot of information from the radio. So when we don't have that information, because there are a few jobs that were the scariest for me, where you go in blind.
Yes.
And you don't know what you're coming into. And we get a call from a member of the community who's heard screaming and shouting and things like that, and we can't be the person that just turns the other way and goes, no, I'm not going to do that. You know, normal members of society will hear screaming and go the opposite direction. We have to go to it. So we don't know what we're going into. We have to go into situations where we're walking into someone's kitchen. We can see certain things in a kitchen, but we know that they know where they keep the large knives. Yeah. We don't know where they keep their weapons.
Was there ever a moment where you felt like your life was seriously threatened?
Absolutely. Yeah. There were a few hairy moments in my career, and it's sort of, I think it didn't really hit me until I had children. I think the moment I had children, I became very mortal, and I realised that
it's
I
true,
couldn't
isn't
be
it?
that. Yeah,
Yes.
I need to go home to my children, and I can't be running into jobs where the potential for life-threatening harm is you know, very, very well a fact. You know, we could walk into a job where we don't end up going home to our families, and you just never know. So
it's funny, that instinct that kicks in, because on a very low level, I was just telling my kids the other day about how once I had kids, I didn't want to go on roller coasters or anything anymore, because all of a sudden I had this instinct that I had to protect myself.
That's it.
To protect my children.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I used to ski. Well, I still ski, but when I was younger and before I had my son, I would ski so fast, and I'd go, like, I was probably going 70 kilometres down a slope, straight down, tucked in, no helmet. The moment you have kids, it's just like, I can't do that anymore. And then I suddenly start skiing quite fearfully and looking at every bump and adjusting my track. And so, something definitely happens.
Something kicks in, doesn't it?
There's a switch that gets flicked and all of a sudden you're a human again and you think, hang on a second, I want to be there to provide for my family. Yes. What do I have to put in place in order to make sure I'm doing that?
Yes. So was that one of your motivations to get into bodybuilding, or did that already pre-exist?
I think mine was more a confidence thing. I moved down to Brisbane. I was going through my separation with my husband at the time, and it was more a distraction initially because I was going through so much of my personal life and I was so stressed out. I thought, what can I do to distract myself in the meantime to get myself through this phase of life where everything is an unknown and I don't like the unknowns. I much prefer that structured, regimented schedule kind of, and I just didn't know what my future held. And I thought I've got to have some sort of goal to work towards. I'd already I'd paid off my mortgage and set that goal for myself and done that. I'd got a goal to be in the police force since I was a very young girl. I did that. I needed that next goal. So that was what I was looking for. And I thought, what better way to challenge myself than, as Kerryn put it so nicely, to jump up on stage in front of my dad and hundreds of other people in a bikini and put everything basically that you've worked for over so many years, or at that stage I had only just sort of started my journey, but, in front of all these people and just say, here I am. What do you think? Am I worthy? So and that's the thing. It's very subjective. You're putting yourself up on stage in front of people that varied opinions. Someone might like you, someone might not. So
how does that feel being judged?
It's a scary moment.
How do you handle that? Yeah. Because knowing that some like it, some people don't.
That's it, exactly. Yeah. And I've had to learn that my entire life, I think, is that you do the best for you. And as long as you know that you've done the best for yourself and you couldn't have done any better, there was no, cake that you could have just skipped that night at that birthday party that would have made you that little bit leaner to put you better against your competitors. I think you sort of switch yourself and go, this is me. Yeah. This is the best me I've got, and I don't mind what everyone else's me looks like. But
so long as you're happy with the result.
That's right. Yeah.
I imagine you must have to be very strong, have good mental health to be in this industry. Because as you mentioned, Kerryn, you as you are young, looking in Dolly magazine, you get this impression that to be perfect is to be slender, to eat lettuce, and that can really play, particularly for young girls, that can really play with your mental health. So then, whether that is a motivation for people to get into bodybuilding, then to be rejected when you're on stage, how do people handle that, and what would be your suggestion?
I think body dysmorphia is a big thing in bodybuilding, even with professionals. I can say it myself. Body dysmorphia plays a big part in how I act, what I do, because I judge myself. I'm very strict with what I do, and I'm my harshest critic, as we all are. So there is body dysmorphia that plays a role. You look at yourself and you go, right, tomorrow I'm going to try this a little bit harder because, next week I want to look like this. Or you just need to know that no one's perfect and we're all struggling those little internal battles. We all have those things that we're sort of striving towards that we may or may not achieve. As long as we know we're doing our best, that's all we can ever do is what I try and sort of get out there.
And we're having such a great conversation, but we've got so much story here. We're going to have to extend it into next week, aren't we?
Yes, part 2 will come next week. So make sure you stay with us because we're going to dig a little deeper. So that's it for today's podcast. You'll find us on all the major podcast platforms. The podcasts come out every Wednesday. We'd love to hear from you on our socials, the Gold Diggers Podcast. Tell us about your story so we can find the gold in you.
Easy as pie. Lemon, apple or cherry, loving you is so very sweet, sweet, sweet. How can it be such a piece of cake? And your smile is the icing, loving you is a poem. Honey, you're my sugar.